what we're doing is we're humanizing how people interact with data. So data is stored in databases, of course, but one of the challenging pieces is getting access to that data. So what we do is we allow people to ask for things they want using their own words and natural language, and then our AI interprets that, understands it, and then figures out how to dynamically go and grab that information from the database and do any calculations that are required.
Capgemini is a global consulting firm, commonly referred to as an SI, Systems Integration Partner. We are one of the larger firms in the world in our space. We do about $20 billion a year in revenue. We have about 230,000 employees worldwide. And so, yeah, we compete with the Accentures and the PwCs and the Deloittes and the TCSs and all of those things. Everything from managed services to application development to digital strategy and transformation, organizational change management. All of those things fall in the scope of what Capgemini does.
Artificial intelligence is defined a lot of different ways by actually a lot of leading experts out there. The way we look at it is artificial intelligence is a system that's been trained, or people in the biz call it a model. And then what that does is that takes some type of input and it produces some type of result. But the key differentiating factor with AI is that the system can take an input that it's never seen before or never been trained before and actually be able to infer correctly what the output should be for that. So an example would be if you're teaching children shapes and colors, you can show them squares, triangles, and circles. Let's say blue and green is an example. And then you have some other type of shape, but not of triangles. So what the inference would be is that when you show that child a purple triangle, they've never seen that before, they've never been trained on it before, but they have the ability to infer that that is a purple triangle. Okay, so how we define it is really about inference, where machine learning is just that process I talked about, which was getting data and actually training something. So machine learning is more the tools and the systems you use in order to train an artificial intelligence. A lot of people say it's a subset within artificial intelligence, which is true to a point, but it's more about actually training the system to do what it needs to do, which is, of course, infer and provide some results.
When I think about artificial intelligence, that is a computer recognizing that an action needs to take place without a human having to do that action. A lot of times AI is used for situational monitoring and then the alerting systems corresponding to the monitoring. So if you think about, let's use fast food as a good example, right? So if you have a fast food restaurant, call it McDonald's, and they do a lot of business in the drive-through, right? And all of a sudden their drive-through starts to get backed up. And then based on how far back it is, the computer will decide to whom they send a message to and what the contents of that message is, right? So if all of a sudden we get to where we have a 3 or 4 car queue, it might send an alert to your branch manager saying, hey, the situation in your drive-through is turning yellow. Right? And then if we get to where we have a 13 car queue that's wrapping around the building and nobody get in and out of the parking lot, now we've got a code red situation, right? So that's AI. Okay. When we start talking about machine learning, that's when we start talking about the machine being able to develop context between 2 data points on its own. So all of a sudden it's, okay, well, the machine recognizes that, if you have a set of, let's call it 50 data points that track on a timeline chart that looks kind of like an EKG would, if you know what that looks like. So you got a little bar that goes up and down, and they all kind of have a similar pattern, right? When some goes up, others go down, but they're consistent about that. Mm-hmm. Well, the machine starts to learn what deviation looks like amongst those correlations. So all of a sudden, when one line goes up and another line is supposed to go down, but it goes up instead, that's when the machine will learn, okay, I need to now dive into that and look at the Y's. And then based on that, the machine will be able to either consider that as a future state. Now this is the new normal, and the machine knows now when this goes up, this now goes up. Or it'll send the alert using the artificial intelligence we talked about before and said, hey, something's broken. This is who it needs to go to and who needs to address it.
Our team is mainly engineering at the moment right now. So we have, everything from PhDs, data scientists, you name it. So really AI and machine learning is at the core of what we do. It's our heartbeat. It's what a lot of the people in the company actually do in their free time as a hobby as well. So it's truly ingrained in kind of our day-to-day thinking and our day-to-day processes. As I mentioned, we use our system internally. And so it clearly affects us because it makes us more efficient internally as well. And other than that, I think we're looking at adopting other systems that aren't ours, which maybe are involving some machine intelligence types of functionalities. But again, we kind of run into that. Is it? It sounds fancy, but is it really achieving the end objective? And I think that's something that is a challenge out there in the space. Is people always market, and we made the mistake of this early on too, is just trying to blast out the cool buzzwords and everything else, where at the end of the day, it's got to be how is that useful to people and how does it make their life better? Because that's the ultimate goal of it, right?
I think for me, the biggest change that I'm seeing is, we are getting to the point where our go-to-market proposition has to be more value-centric than it is capability-centric. So when I look at global SIs like Capgemini, historically we have lived and died on the concept of the billable hour and utilization rates. And then when you look at globalization, we have combated market forces for things like margin erosion by using global distributed workforces and tapping into skilled talent pools that may be accessible on a lower cost basis, right? Well, all the while, what that's done is that has tied our market value directly to our market cost, which means now we have challenges when you start looking at things like resource scarcity in specific domain areas. Now we cannot deliver to our customers if we cannot add more people. And adding more people is becoming increasingly constrained with geopolitical environments, as well as the rapid pace of change in the technology ecosystem. Training somebody on a specific tool set doesn't make as much sense today as it did yesterday, because there's no guarantee that tool set's going to be around in 18 months. So I think for us, it's really forcing a cultural shift where our value proposition is centered on business impact and opportunity for our clients, either solving a very specific problem, opening a very specific door, driving a specific KPI, to be improved. But it's not about, we have the ability to deliver whatever on whatever platform for you moving forward, right? That's becoming so commoditized that there's really not that much value in it. And there's so much information available on Google that if you are willing to go the least expensive route and you can give your current employees time, they can find the answers in most cases to pretty much any problem you're trying to solve just by using tools that are available over the internet.
The AI space is so gigantic. You have, big buckets, of course, which is near and dear to our heart, is natural language processing, which, again, people often incorrectly relate that to conversational AI. Conversational AI and natural language processing are two pretty different things. But you have the natural language processing space, you have the computer vision space as well. So on the computer vision side of things, the big trends are the ability to generate images, essentially. Generate false images is a huge trend right now. So not only identifying things like faces or some of the biometrics technology, but there's this trend where you can use these things called generative adversarial networks, and you can actually build fake images. So if you ever see in the media about fake images or fake videos. Like there's one of Barack Obama talking, but it's not really him talking. That's what these systems are. So it's a big trend now because the research is going very fast, but then there's a lot of these ethical considerations to think about as well. On the natural language processing side, there's tons of research around, 80% of all data out there is unstructured data and tons of text. So emails, just text messages back and forth, everything else. So a big trend is processing that and making some sense of that. So one of the things we'll be releasing very soon here is the ability to automatically process hotel and restaurant reviews as well, because, the business owners don't necessarily have the time to read through those, nor do GMs. So the ability to take all that unstructured data, quickly go through it, and provide some type of analysis to the end user as well. But the biggest trend we're seeing, and of course everybody sees, is this whole big data space. So the amount of data is growing astronomically. And what that does is that causes a huge problem for software developers, right? So people developing, doesn't matter if it's oil and gas software, real estate software, or accounting software. The amount of data they're storing grows and grows and grows. So again, the customer's expectation is that the reporting and analytics capability on that data is there. And so that's a major challenge that we're seeing out there in talking to some of the other software vendors, which is why we've creating a new basically service line where we can integrate our service, our natural language understanding and data query service into other people's software. So we've saw this trend and we see it continue to become bigger and grow. And so that's part of the reason where we decided to say, hey, yes, we can keep everything in a product, but why not make this service available? Because we can do a better job of helping human beings around the world if we make that capability openly available to people to people using the hundreds of thousands of different software applications out there.
Yeah, I think the biggest change that I've seen is that they've become less specialized and more ubiquitous. So I say physically, but I guess it's really more organizationally, sit within our insights and data global business. Okay. And so what that means is we have a practice globally set up just to talk about and to deliver services that are involving insights and data. Now, what does that mean? Because I don't touch SAP. I don't do anything with ERP systems. I don't touch CRM or vendor management software. But those are all components of data, and they drive a lot of insights and actions for companies as they move forward. And a lot of those tool sets are part of enterprise transformation initiatives to enable future state capabilities that they don't have today. And so if I go back 3 to 5 years, concepts like IoT were so unique, you almost had a specialized practice set up around IoT. I know about it because I was but now IoT has become so ubiquitous that now, it's almost like talking about mobile was back in the early 2000s when we talked about, there's web and then there's mobile, and these two are necessarily different. Mm-hmm. And now we talk about it all as digital. And even now, as we move to today, we're talking about it all as commerce, because your customer doesn't care if it's a brick and mortar experience or they're doing it over their phone. So I think that the biggest change has been the industrial adoption of some of these concepts, and then sort of a multiplication across different specialties to where these things are now embedded traits within other specialized service lines, not their own individual thing.
But what else is coming up for you guys?
Yeah, so something that's maybe not as exciting, but I guess more practical, is the just handling CSV files as an example. So that's the common export from a database system. So we're coming across, especially in this cloud accounting ecosystem, there's literally thousands of different software applications people use in and out of the ecosystem, and they want the ability to get out of the spreadsheet world and be able to analyze all that data together. So One really important thing that we're doing is going to be launching the ability to upload a CSV, and then a language model gets automatically trained. So you upload the CSV and then you start asking questions, right? That's as simple as that. You can save that, everything else. So that one's not as exciting, but definitely hugely practical, because it works anywhere from the small business all the way up to the large enterprises. Because if you talk to the large enterprises, even the ones with giant ERP system implementations, there's still tons of export of data into spreadsheets. And, for a lot of people, that's, they're not wizards in the spreadsheet space. And then, of course, the other one is the chat as a service piece, which is going to be, we're pushing very hard on that. We continue to kind of push the envelope of our technology development. And that's something that we're going to be pushing very hard on in 2019. So to your point earlier, you'll have Chata.ai, which is the product. You can integrate things into everything else. And then you'll be seeing more powered by Chata pop up in other people's applications, where we can just integrate directly in there. So really trying to, like I mentioned, leverage the technology that we've built here, and allow it or make it available for everybody else.
It is exciting, because I think we are, as a society and as a culture, we're moving more into value-based engagement, right? Mm-hmm. People don't go to Starbucks because it's the cheapest coffee. Yeah. People go to Starbucks because they find value in the Starbucks experience, right? Which is a combination of the ease of interaction, the quality of coffee, the experience when they get there, everything involved, right? It's no one thing over the other. And I think that, in that, we have seen a move in technology from services to products. Yes. And what you see is companies like ours who have built their enterprises on the fact that we have these wide-reaching talent pools who can do a wide variety where breadth of information and knowledge has been more valuable. What we're seeing now is a market shifting and saying, I'd rather buy from more people, but no, I'm buying from the most expert level person in that field, and then I'll go to their neighbor who's most expert level in the field adjacent to them, right? I don't need one person who's pretty good in all the fields. I'd rather work with the different leaders in each of their domains, and they're actually willing to pay more for it. You see it when companies acquire startups, because they start out by, maybe the startup gives them something for free, and then they pilot something for 6 months, and then they acquire them for, $78 million, right? Mm-hmm. Great story. There was definitely a consulting company on the front end of that who said, we can build you this for somewhere around $3 or $4 million. Right. So the market is willing to pay 20x when the market believes the value is there, and the market's not going to believe it because you tell them you're going to have to prove it. And once you prove that value is there, the market will reward you for that value. And I think that's the single biggest change and force that the SI industry is going to have to compete against moving forward.
Our website, Chata.ai, as well as Twitter. Twitter's another really good one. The handle's at the Chata HQ. And so there's usually a lot of stuff on there. I usually interact quite a bit, with our main Chata group as well. I'm on LinkedIn if anybody wants to connect as well. Always happy to have discussions about things, or, if people have questions or even some concerns about just them implementing AI within their, day-to-day, I'm more than happy to help out.
So I'm on Twitter and Instagram, both is at Chris Rampley. Twitter becomes a little bit more business centric. Instagram becomes a little bit more lifestyle, but if they want to know more about who I am, that's probably going to give them a more clear picture. Obviously, I'm on LinkedIn, linkedin.com/Chris Rampley. You can find me there pretty easily. And then Capgemini's global website, www.capgemini.com. If you go to capgemini.com/Applied Insights Foundry, you will also reach my team's kind of microsite. If anybody needs to send an email to me and they don't want to use Twitter to reach me, they can always email me at chris.rampley@capgemini.com.